Sarah Martinez went from refusing service to a black customer to updating her resume in the same afternoon, and it all started when she assumed the wrong person couldn't afford to bank there.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and a comment before we start to learn more about what happened.
The marble floors of First National Bank gleamed under the crystal chandeliers as the afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows on Madison Avenue. At 31, Sarah Martinez had worked as a senior teller at the prestigious downtown branch for 6 years, and she prided herself on knowing exactly what kind of customers belonged in their upscale establishment. The bank catered to wealthy clients, CEOs, real estate moguls, investment bankers, and old money families who had been banking there for generations. The minimum account balance was $50,000, and the average client maintained portfolios worth millions. Sarah had become skilled at identifying potential customers who met their standards and politely redirecting those who didn't. That Thursday afternoon started like any other. Sarah was processing a wire transfer for Mrs. Pemberton, a socialite who maintained several accounts totaling over $2 million, when the bank's heavy glass doors opened and a man walked in. Marcus Johnson was 45 years old, wearing faded jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt with paint stains on the sleeves. His hands showed the calluses of manual labor, and his appearance suggested he worked in construction or a similar trade. He looked around the elegant lobby for a moment, taking in the marble columns and oil paintings before approaching Sarah's window. Sarah glanced up from Mrs. Pemberton's paperwork, immediately noting the stark contrast between Marcus and their typical clientele. She finished processing the wire transfer before acknowledging the new arrival. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, her tone polite but noticeably cooler than the warm greeting she'd given Mrs. Pemberton. Marcus approached the window with a calm demeanor. "Good afternoon. I'd like to make a withdrawal from my account, please." Sarah's eyebrows raised slightly. She looked Marcus up and down more carefully, noting his work-worn appearance and modest clothing. "You have an account here at First National." "Yes, I do," Marcus replied simply, reaching for his wallet. Sarah's skepticism was evident in her expression. First National wasn't the kind of bank where someone in work clothes typically maintained an account. Their minimum balance requirements alone would exclude most working-class individuals. "Sir," Sarah said, her voice taking on a patronizing tone, "I think there might be some confusion. First National Bank has very specific account requirements. Perhaps you're thinking of one of our other branches, or maybe a different bank entirely." Marcus remained patient. "No confusion. I'd like to access my account here, at this branch." Sarah exchanged a quick glance with her colleague, Jennifer Walsh, who was working at the adjacent window. Jennifer had noticed the conversation and was listening with interest. "Well," Sarah continued, "if you do have an account here, I'll need to see identification and verify your account information. But I should let you know that we have minimum balance requirements, and if your account has fallen below our standards, there may be fees involved in any transactions." Marcus pulled out his driver's license and handed it to Sarah. "Marcus Johnson. The account should be under that name." Sarah took the license and entered the information into her computer system. As the account details loaded on her screen, her expression shifted from skepticism to confusion, then to outright disbelief. The computer showed not just one account, but multiple accounts under Marcus Johnson's name, and the balances weren't in the thousands or even hundreds of thousands. The primary checking account showed a balance of $2.3 million. The savings account contained $5.8 million. There were investment accounts, certificates of deposit, and business accounts, all totaling well over $12 million. Sarah stared at the screen, certain there had been some mistake. She refreshed the page, but the numbers remained the same. This couldn't be right. The man standing in front of her in paint-stained work clothes couldn't possibly be the owner of accounts worth more than most of their wealthy clients maintained. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, noticing Sarah's prolonged silence. Sarah looked up from her computer, then back at the screen, then at Marcus again. "Sir, I'm going to need to verify this information with my supervisor. Please wait here." She stood abruptly and walked to the back office, where branch manager Robert Chen was reviewing loan applications. Chen had been with First National for 12 years and had built a reputation as someone who maintained the bank's exclusive standards. "Mr. Chen," Sarah said, her voice urgent but low, "I need you to look at something. There's a customer claiming to have accounts here, but the numbers on the screen don't make sense." Chen looked up from his paperwork. "What kind of numbers?" "Over 12 million across multiple accounts," Sarah whispered. "But Mr. Chen, you need to see this customer. He's wearing work clothes and looks like he does manual labor. Something's not right." Chen's interest was immediately piqued. Account fraud was a serious concern, and if someone was attempting to access accounts that didn't belong to them, it needed to be investigated immediately. Chen followed Sarah back to the teller area, where Marcus waited patiently at the window. Chen positioned himself where he could observe both Marcus and Sarah's computer screen. "Sir," Sarah said, returning to her window, "I'm going to need additional verification before we can process any transactions. This is standard procedure for large account holders." Marcus nodded. "What kind of verification do you need?" Sarah looked to Chen for guidance. Chen stepped forward, introducing himself as the branch manager. "Mr. Johnson," Chen said, "we're showing some very significant account balances under your name, and frankly, we want to make sure we're providing service to the right person. Can you tell me when these accounts were opened?" Marcus thought for a moment. "The first account was opened in 2018. The business accounts were added in 2020 and 2021. Chen made notes on a pad. "And can you tell me the nature of your business?" "I own a construction company," Marcus replied. "We specialize in commercial and residential projects throughout the state." Sarah couldn't hide her skepticism. "A construction company with 12 million in our bank." Marcus looked at her calmly. "Is that unusual?" Chen stepped in, sensing the conversation was becoming awkward. "Mr. Johnson, would you mind if we contacted our verification department to confirm account details? It's just a precaution we take with high-value accounts." "That's fine," Marcus said, "but I should mention that I'm in a hurry today. I need to make a withdrawal for a business transaction this afternoon." Sarah looked at Chen with an expression that clearly said she thought they were dealing with either a confused individual or someone attempting fraud. Chen shared her suspicion but knew they needed to follow proper procedures. "How much were you looking to withdraw?" Chen asked. 200,000, Marcus replied without hesitation. Sarah nearly choked. $200,000? "Is that a problem?" Marcus asked. Chen's mind was racing. If this was fraud, it was incredibly sophisticated. But if it was legitimate, they were treating a major client very poorly. "Mr. Johnson," Chen said carefully, "withdrawals of that size typically require advance notice and additional security protocols." Marcus checked his watch. "I understand, but as I mentioned, this is time-sensitive. Perhaps you could call your regional manager. I believe Janet Morrison handles oversight for this branch." Chen froze. Janet Morrison was indeed their regional manager, but that wasn't information that would be readily available to the general public. How would a construction worker know Janet Morrison's name? "You know Ms. Morrison?" Chen asked. "We've met several times," Marcus replied. "She handles the relationship management for larger accounts." Sarah and Chen exchanged confused glances. Nothing about this situation was making sense. The man in front of them looked like a blue-collar worker, but his account balances suggested wealth, beyond what most of their clients possessed. He knew their regional manager by name and was requesting a six-figure withdrawal with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to large financial transactions. Chen made a decision. "Mr. Johnson, I'm going to call Ms. Morrison directly to verify account details and get authorization for this withdrawal." "That's fine," Marcus said. "Tell her Marcus Johnson from Johnson Construction is here." Chen walked to his office and dialed Morrison's direct line. Sarah remained at her window, staring at Marcus with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. The phone rang twice before Morrison answered. "Janet Morrison." "Ms. Morrison, this is Robert Chen at the Madison Avenue branch. I have a customer here claiming to be Marcus Johnson, and there are some unusual circumstances I need to discuss with you." There was a pause. "Marcus Johnson. Is he there for the quarterly review meeting?" Chen's stomach dropped. "Quarterly review meeting." "Yes," Morrison continued. "Mr. Johnson owns the construction company that's been our largest commercial client for the past 3 years. He also—" "Wait, Robert. What exactly is the situation there?" Chen's mouth went dry. "Ma'am, could you clarify Mr. Johnson's relationship with the bank?" Morrison's tone became concerned. "Robert, Marcus Johnson isn't just a client. He's one of our primary shareholders. He owns approximately 30% of First National Bank. What's going on?" The phone nearly slipped from Chen's hand. He looked through his office window at Marcus, who was still waiting patiently at Sarah's window, and at Sarah, who was clearly growing more impatient and suspicious by the minute. "Ms. Morrison," Chen said slowly, "I think we may have a situation here." "What kind of situation?" "Our staff didn't recognize Mr. Johnson, and they've been treating him like a potentially fraudulent customer." The line was quiet for several seconds. "Robert, are you telling me that Marcus Johnson, who owns 30% of your bank, has been standing in your lobby being treated like a suspect?" Chen closed his eyes. "I believe that's exactly what I'm telling you." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Morrison said curtly. "And Robert, make sure Mr. Johnson receives whatever service he requires, immediately." Chen hung up the phone and walked quickly back to the teller area. Sarah was now openly staring at Marcus with suspicion, while Marcus remained calm and patient. "Mr. Johnson," Chen said, his voice now completely different, "I sincerely apologize for the delay. We can absolutely process your withdrawal request right now." Sarah looked at Chen with confusion. "But Mr. Chen, we haven't verified—" "Sarah," Chen interrupted, his voice sharp, "please process Mr. Johnson's withdrawal immediately." Sarah looked back and forth between Chen and Marcus, clearly not understanding the sudden change in procedure. "I don't understand what's happening here." Marcus spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Perhaps I can clarify the situation." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, handing it to Sarah. The card read, "Marcus Johnson, CEO, Johnson Construction Group," with contact information and a professional logo. "I own a construction company," Marcus explained patiently, "that has generated over $40 million in revenue over the past 3 years. I also happen to own 30% of this bank." Sarah stared at the business card, then at Marcus, then at Chen. "Own 30% of the bank?" Chen nodded grimly. "Sarah, Mr. Johnson is one of our primary shareholders." The color drained from Sarah's face as the full implications of the situation became clear. She had been treating one of the bank's owners like a potential criminal, based solely on his appearance. "Mr. Johnson," Sarah stammered, "I had no idea. I didn't realize—" Marcus looked at her calmly. "You didn't realize that someone who looks like me could afford to bank here?" Sarah's face reddened. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" Marcus asked gently. You assumed that because I'm wearing work clothes and because I'm black, I couldn't possibly be a legitimate customer of this bank. Chen stepped forward. Mr. Johnson, on behalf of First National Bank, I want to apologize for any misunderstanding. Marcus turned to Chen. Mr. Chen, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was profiling, pure and simple. Your employee made assumptions about my worth based on my race and my clothing. At that moment, the bank's front door opened and Janet Morrison entered. She was a tall, professional woman in her 50s who commanded immediate respect. She scanned the lobby and quickly identified the situation at Sarah's window. Morrison approached the group with purposeful strides. Mr. Johnson, I am so sorry for any inconvenience you've experienced today. Ms. Morrison, Marcus replied, I think inconvenience might be understating what happened here. Morrison looked at Chen and Sarah, her expression making clear that she expected a full explanation later. Mr. Johnson, how can we make this right? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his response. Ms. Morrison, I've been banking here for 6 years. My company has done millions of dollars in business with this bank. I've never once been treated with the respect that should be accorded to any customer, let alone a shareholder. Morrison nodded. You're absolutely right. Today, Marcus continued, your employee questioned whether I could afford to bank here, suggested I was confused about which bank I intended to visit, and treated me like a potential criminal. All because of how I look. Sarah stood frozen behind her window, realizing that her assumptions had potentially cost her job. Furthermore, Marcus said, I suspect this isn't an isolated incident. I suspect other customers who don't fit this bank's image of wealth have been treated similarly. Morrison's expression was serious. Mr. Johnson, what would you like to see happen? Marcus looked at Sarah, then at Chen, then back at Morrison. I want to see comprehensive bias training for all customer-facing staff. I want to see clear policies about how customers are treated regardless of their appearance. And I want to see accountability for behavior that doesn't meet professional standards. Morrison nodded. Consider it done. Marcus then turned to Sarah. Ms. Martinez, I want you to understand something. I don't wear expensive suits to the bank because I don't need to prove my worth to anyone. I've built a successful business by working hard, treating people with respect, and never judging anyone based on appearances. Sarah looked down at her hands. Mr. Johnson, I'm truly sorry. You're right about everything you've said. I hope you are sorry, Marcus replied, because your behavior today wasn't just unprofessional, it was discriminatory, and it represented exactly the kind of thinking that keeps people from reaching their potential. Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Johnson, would you like to proceed with your transaction? Marcus nodded. Yes, I still need to make that withdrawal. Sarah processed the withdrawal with trembling hands, her earlier skepticism replaced by profound embarrassment. The transaction that should have taken 5 minutes had become an hour-long ordeal that exposed serious problems with the bank's culture. As Marcus prepared to leave, Morrison walked him to the door. Mr. Johnson, I want to assure you that this incident will be thoroughly reviewed and that changes will be implemented immediately. Marcus paused at the door. Ms. Morrison, I hope you understand that this isn't just about me. Every customer who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. That's not just good business, it's basic human decency. Morrison watched as Marcus left the bank and got into a modest pickup truck, the same vehicle that Sarah had probably assumed meant he couldn't afford to bank at First National. Over the following weeks, First National implemented comprehensive diversity and bias training for all employees. Customer service protocols were revised to ensure respectful treatment, regardless of appearance or apparent wealth. Sarah received a formal reprimand and was required to complete additional training on professional customer service. Marcus continued to bank at First National, but he also started making unannounced visits to other branches to observe how customers were treated. His experience had opened his eyes to systemic issues that needed addressing throughout the organization. 3 months later, customer satisfaction scores at First National had improved significantly, and complaints about discriminatory treatment had virtually disappeared. The bank had learned that true wealth comes in many forms, and that judging people by their appearance was not just morally wrong, it was bad for business. Sarah eventually learned to treat every customer with equal respect and professionalism. She often reflected on her encounter with Marcus Johnson as a turning point in her career and her understanding of implicit bias. And Marcus? He continued to wear his work clothes to the bank, not because he couldn't afford expensive suits, but because he had learned that respect should never depend on what you wear. It should depend on who you are as a human being. Because sometimes the person who looks like they don't belong is exactly the person who owns the place.